Hello, I am Dr. Kathleen Ewell, the Director of the Office of Generic Drugs in the Center for Drug Evaluation and Research at the FDA. Increasing consumer access to safe, high-quality, and affordable generic drugs is a top priority at the FDA, and for good reason. Generic drugs often cost a fraction of the price of the brand name version of the same medication. 9 out of 10 prescriptions are filled using generic drugs. Yet, generic prescriptions account for only 28% of total drug spending. While FDA does not have a direct role in drug pricing, it has a critical role in ensuring that patients have access to these beneficial medicines. When more than one generic version of a drug is approved, it spurs competition and provides affordable options for consumers. Our job in the Office of Generic Drugs is to review applications by companies that want to manufacture and sell generic drug products in the United States. We strive to do so in a timely way and will then approve them providing they meet FDA standards. Today, with the help of funding that comes to the FDA through GDUFA, the Generic Drug User Fee Amendments, and through the efforts of a highly skilled and committed staff, we are approving record numbers of generic drugs. User fees are payments from the regulated industry that supplement the traditional budget appropriations FDA receives from Congress. These fees help fund the U.S. generic drug program. The regulatory pathway for generic drugs was actually created in 1984 by the Hatch-Waxman amendments to the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act. However, no user fee program existed for generic drugs until 2012, when legislation was passed as part of another act, the Food and Drug Administration Safety and Innovation Act. User fees for brand name drugs, called the Prescription Drug User Fee Amendments, or PDUFA, have been in place since 1992. User fees are renegotiated with industry every 5 years and then must be reauthorized by Congress and signed into law by the President. Since the passage of GDUFA, user fees have played a critical role in expediting the generic drug review and approval process. In fact, 25% of all generic drugs approved today were approved during the first 5 years of the program, which we call GDUFA I, that ran from 2012 through 2017. Generic drugs have grown in popularity over the years as a result of their cost savings, and more drug companies have wanted to develop and market generic drugs for this expanding market. As a result, FDA has been receiving increasing numbers of generic drug applications. At the same time, brand name medicines in the United States have become more complex. Developing generic copies of those complex drug products is challenging, and it's posed both scientific and regulatory challenges. FDA's generic drug program was under-resourced to address the volume and complexity of the applications coming into the agency. Because of these and other factors that contribute to the thorough scientific review of generic drug applications, approvals for some generic drugs were taking years. Patients were missing out on access to some beneficial medicines. What's more, the lack of competition among generic drugs kept prices high and out of reach for some patients. FDA and industry came together and agreed on a user fee program for generic drugs with goals to support the timely and predictable review of generic drug applications. The agreement was in the form of a commitment letter, and it's this commitment letter that guides the FDA and industry during the negotiated 5-year period for both GDUFA I and GDUFA II. You can find the commitment letters on the Generic Drug User Fee webpage on fda.gov. User fees support staffing that enables the FDA to review applications for generic drugs in a timely way. They provide funds for important IT infrastructure that helps FDA manage the hundreds of applications the agency receives every year. Plus, fees support other critical activities, such as inspections of facilities making generic drugs. User fees also fund important regulatory research that helps the FDA develop the science and improve the review and approval processes for generic drug products. You can learn more about the GDUFA Regulatory Science Program by searching generic drugs at FDA.gov. We've come a long way since the first negotiation that became GDUFA I that ran from 2012 through 2017. During GDUFA I, the FDA approved record numbers of generic drugs. 1/4 of all generic drugs currently approved were approved during GDUFA I. In the last 2 years of GDUFA I, the FDA approved more generic drugs than in the history of the generic drug program. Approval times fell, and we saw first cycle approvals increase. And to date, the FDA has met or exceeded all the goals we committed to in GDUFA I. On August 18, 2017, the President signed GDUFA II into law for 5 more years. With it comes a new set of goals and commitments that we share with industry. At the FDA, we're focused on 2 major objectives in GDUFA II: reducing the number of review cycles to approval and increasing approvals of safe, high-quality, and lower-cost generic drugs. The goals and commitments we agree to with industry in GDUFA II should set us up for success. We now have different review goals for priority applications and more communications touchpoints with industry. To review complex generic drug products more efficiently, the FDA will meet earlier and more frequently with an applicant to anticipate and work through challenges that arise from developing these products. GDUFA II also takes into account the needs of small business with a tiered user fee structure. To help all stakeholders understand the new features of GDUFA II, we've produced a number of 10-minute videos on key features of GDUFA II that we believe will be helpful to you. You can find the videos by going to the GDUFA webpage at FDA.gov. I encourage you to watch them and review the resources that accompany the videos. There are more training opportunities through CDER's Small Business and Industry Assistance website. Additionally, there is always up-to-date information about GDUFA and the generic drug program on the GDUFA and generic drugs web pages at FDA.gov. Thank you for your interest in FDA's generic drug program.